is our deputy clerk, Sarah Kyoko. I'll invite members to introduce themselves, starting with Honorable Naisula.
Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa.
Julius Mohammed, MP Suna East.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa.
Nelson Koech, MP Belgut.
Thank you.
David Kosing, MP Pokot South.
Thank you.
Gikaria David, Nakuru Town East.
Thank you.
Now on this side.
Mase Mary, MP Teso South.
Thank you.
Abdul Rahim Daud, MP Nordimenti, Meru County.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa.
I'm Ferdinand Kevin Wanyonyi, Member of Parliament, Kwanza, Trans Nzoia County.
Thank you.
George Gitonga Murugara, MP Tharaka, Tharaka Nithi.
Owen Baya, MP Kilifi North.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa.
Robert Mbui, MP Kadhiani.
Thank you.
Stephen Mule, MP Matungulu.
Thank you.
Dido Raso, MP Saku.
Santeni.
Mishimboko Likoni.
Thank you.
Rehab Mukami, Nyeri.
Santi.
Kaleba Misi Saboti.
Thank you.
Mr. Ogamba, once again, welcome.
Thank you.
This committee. You will be sworn. You are going to testify on oath. You can choose, depending on your faith, to swear on the Bible, on the Quran, or to affirm. Which one do you prefer?
I'll use the Bible. Mr.
You swear on the
Speaker.
Bible.
Yes.
Take the Bible in your right hand and recite the standard oath.
I, Julius Ogamba, do swear that the evidence I shall give before the committee on the matter under its consideration shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Before we start, can you pass on your documents to the clerk so that she can be able to verify documents you're carrying against the documents submitted to us? Very good. For a start, we invite you to give us a self-introduction, briefly, your name, your educational background, your work experience, and your key competences that make you feel appropriate for the position for which you have been nominated. No more than 5 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and thank you, honorable members of the Appointment Committee. I'm greatly humbled to be here today before you for my confirmation hearing, the position of CS Education. First and foremost, Honorable Speaker, I wish to thank His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya for finding it fit to nominate me to this position. Honorable Speaker, my name is Julius Ogamba. I was born 57 years ago in Kisii County. I went to primary school in a school called Kenyoro, and thereafter I moved to a school called Homa Bay where I did my CPE exams. After that, I was called to Kabarak High School where I did my Form 4, and then I was called again back to that same school for my A-levels. Thereafter I passed, and I was called to go to the University of Nairobi to do the degree in law. Prior to that, I did a stint as an untrained teacher in Buruburu High School under KD Handa schools those days. After graduation, I went to the Kenya School of Law, and after admission to the bar, I started my legal practice in Nairobi. I started a law firm called Ogamba and Company, and thereafter, in 1996, I took a break. I went to the University of London, where I studied a diploma in the advanced legal studies. I got a diploma from there. Since that time, I've been practicing law, spanning almost 31 years as a private practitioner. I have represented various clients, both individual clients and corporate clients. I have also had a stint in politics. In 2007, I ran for Parliament for Kitutu Chache North, and 2017, and also in 2022, I ran for the Deputy Governor, Kisii County. In the year 2023, Honorable Speaker, I was appointed to chair the KenGen board, where I've had the opportunity to lead the board and the leadership team in that organization. I provided leadership since that time until I'm still a chair there. So I know that in leadership, you learn to lead organizations. You also have the opportunity to study in that organization. Honorable Speaker, in terms of my suitability to this position, I have had an experience, a large experience, in handling complicated matters in court. I have also had the opportunity to understand what the education docket entails. Honorable Speaker, our Constitution provides under Article 43, under Article 53, and also under Article 55 for provision of education to the children of this country. And the Ministry of Education, under the Basic Act, the Basic Education Act, and also the TVET Act, plus the Universities Act, expands that mandate so that the provisions therein are espoused and has to be undertaken by the Ministry of Education. The role of CS, Honorable Speaker, is to ensure that those provisions, that mandate, is undertaken by offering leadership in policy and putting the team together so that they achieve the goals in that particular act.
That will do. I will invite the Deputy Speaker to be the first to ask you a question. And we expect, when questions are put, to receive concise and precise answers to those questions.
Mr. Ogamba, as you are well aware, many Kenyans have put in a lot of complaints relating to the competency-based curriculum, complaining about the lack of facilities, training of the teachers or sufficient teachers. If you are confirmed, what would you change? What is your analysis of the situation, and how would you handle it if you are appointed to this position?
Thank you, Madam Deputy, for that question. I have listened to Kenyans on the issue of the CBC. It's a competency-based curriculum that came about in order to replace the 844 system that was there before. The issues that I have identified as a challenge in the Act and as a challenge in the program are three in number. There is a problem of lack of teachers. There is also a problem of the engagement of the parents in that program. There's also the challenge of the infrastructure that is supposed to be available to ensure that the CBC is done properly. In my view, the CBC, the competency-based curriculum, is a good program that came to ensure that the children who are learning get the benefit from their talents. So therefore, what would be done is to ensure that the parents understand what it's required for them to be able to assist the children when they are undertaking this CBC.
Naisula.
Thank you, Chairman. To the nominee, I just want to understand from you, what is your take on governments continuing good policies that exist? And why I ask that question is that our cabinet secretaries continuing with the good policies that they find there. In the education sector, we have found and we have seen in the past, every time a cabinet secretary comes in there, they think by changing policies that even are working is showing that they are working. So I want to understand what your take is on that, whether you will continue with the good policies that are working. And my second question is the whole issue of the new university funding model, whether you are aware of it, and what measures will you put in place to ensure that you communicate effectively, especially to the parents and guardians, on what the new university funding model is all about?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Naisula. The question of changing existing policies in an institution that are good is, I think, something that needs to be considered. I do not believe that as a CS, if you went to the institution and you found that there are policies that are working, you need to change them. What you need to change is what is not working. So, because government is one, and you operate on continuity, it's a perpetual succession, so to speak. So if you find that a particular policy is working well, you do not need to change it. What you need to do is change that which is not working. On your second question on effective communication, it is true that there is a challenge with effective communication because some of the policies are complicated. So when they are not unbundled sufficiently for the public to understand them, it brings a bit of a challenge. I think what is not in doubt is that the university funding that you refer to, without a doubt, is a good program. It's a good program because the initial funding that existed was a funding that was going to universities as a block. And in that sense, each and every student was getting it without relating what they are receiving to their needs. The new funding model is a model that is based on the need of the student and the costs of the program. So that if, for example, you are able to fund your education, then based on the fact that you are able to, you should not be financed by government. And in that sense, the little funds that are available go to meet the needs of those who are most vulnerable. So in a manner of speaking, if this unbundling was done properly, then the public would understand what it is. Because the new funding model is a funding model based on the MTI, where parents are assessed using the means testing instrument so that we can determine what level are you, because there is a strata of 5 stages or 5 groups of students that get this funding. So the people or the students who are most vulnerable get the highest amount. Those ones who are able to fund or to fund their service, to fund their education, get the equivalent of what they are able to. For example, the most vulnerable students get 95% funding, and the ones that are able to fund themselves or are able to pay for themselves pay a total of about 60%.
Majority Leader? You'll skip. Yes. Jeanette?
Chairman, I want to ask the nominee that, you know, Okili, I hope you know what you're getting into. Because this Ministry of Education is not a joke. This is something very big all over the country with a lot of problems. And as you are aware, there was a new curriculum that was introduced midway, sometimes back in the former regime when they were almost leaving. And that program has given children and parents a lot of problem. People don't know whether you are in primary school or secondary school or university. You just continue going to school until you find yourself in university. Because all classes, there's a mix-up. Parents don't understand it, children don't understand. So the question I wanted to ask you is, what do you think is the intention of the competency-based curriculum? What do you think it is supposed to achieve in your own view? If you have done research or if you have thought over it, as now the man who's to become the minister, if you are approved by the House. And from your own analysis, just tell us 3 major issues that bedevil the education sector and how you intend to handle them. The second one, before I conclude, there is this new funding model that has been brought of the universities. And it's supposed to, as it has been put, it's supposed to help the needy and everyone, and the people who are in need of fees and such kind of things. But as it is today, it looks like it's not working, and it has refused to work. And it has stopped the transition from secondary to university. Many families that are poor, who are depending on help and other models, are now suffering. Their children cannot go to school. What are your thoughts on that kind of modeling? Because as far as I am concerned, that model was borrowed from developed countries and fixed here when we have not achieved that level of model. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Jeanette. Now, the question that you ask on the 3 main problems that are bedeviling the education sector is a very important question. And in my view...
First, I ask you whether you know what you're getting into.
I'm coming into it. I'm coming into it, and that's why I've started with that one. Because when I thought about it, I realized that the main problem of the education sector is funding. Each and every problem that you can identify in the education sector, its root is funding. Funding in the sense that there is not sufficient money to cover all the programs and all the students in the country. So then I asked myself, just like you've asked me, do I know what I'm getting into? Is this something that I need to do to get in there? And I said, somebody has to do this job. So if you find that I'm suitable to take this position, my thoughts are the only way to solve the problem bedeviling the whole sector is to find a way of raising enough funds to ensure that the provisions of the Constitution with respect to education are covered. When I thought about it, I realized that there has not been a clear audit to find out, for instance, how many students do we have who need resources? How many funds do we have that cover these students? How many organizations are giving various assistance to these children? How many people are contributing every day towards the school fees of these children in the country? In other words, how much money is the whole country spending on education? So that we can come up to a decision on how that money can be harnessed in order to service the education sector and ensure that all the children in the country are actually get free education as stipulated in the Constitution. So I said I would take up the challenge and work with all the stakeholders to find a solution to the funding problem. The second problem that I realized needs to be tackled is there are a lot of good policies and good laws in the education sector. But I realized that perhaps we are not adhering to those particular policies. What do I mean? I mean there is nothing in the education sector that is not provided for, but people are not obeying, or they are not faithful to those policies. So we have a problem of implementation of those policies, hence the need to find a way of ensuring that implementation is up to date. The question of the new curriculum-based, the competency-based curriculum that came about, it actually started in 2012. The 844 system, it came to replace the 844 system, which was basically exam-based. Exam-based in the sense that you have children doing exams. When they don't pass, the ones who pass go to university or to colleges. The ones who don't pass lose their way in the middle. So it became necessary to come up with a competency-based curriculum that recognizes the competencies and the talents of the other children who may not be as good as in the exams. That is why it is a program that will help, that carries every child along. So it is a good program, but it has not been understood fully by all the parties and all the stakeholders. So one of the things that needs to be done is to unbundle the various elements of that particular CBC and have that information passed on to the public so that they can understand. So there needs to be a lot of sensitization in that area because we are now in that program.
Yes, Nelson, has he finished your questions?
The new education funding model, I'd referred to it earlier. It started last year. It is only 1 year into operation. We are doing the second year now. It has some teething problems. And of course, one of the challenges that it has is the means testing instrument is not wide enough to capture everybody and to be able to identify everybody's level of income in order to know the children from those homes what level of funding should they get from the university. So it is working, and it's work in progress.
Nelson, Posing.
Thank you, Speaker. And my question, Speaker, this is the most interesting candidate before us on this committee. And this is the reason why I'm saying, Speaker, I've heard him very clearly. And for the whole of his life, now it's remaining with 3 years for him to attain retirement age. Only 3 years. He has never worked in public service at all. Anywhere, he's not worked in public service. He's not been motivated or what? And in getting the suitability speaker and following what Honorable Junet said.
He's currently the chairman of Kenyan.
Just the other day, Speaker. That's something just the other day. In terms of suitability, Honorable Speaker, in accordance with Section 7, which I want the candidate to be able to explain to this committee and maybe to convince me, what motivation has he in public service now, 3 years to his retire, while he was not motivated for the rest of his life, when he was very, very useful. Remember, Honorable Speaker, I'm not saying that he's not useful any longer. But to attain retirement age is only 3 years. Was that a headhunting or was that a reward? I want Mr. Miko to explain to this committee and the people of Kenya. This is not a joke ministry, as Honorable Bujune said. I don't know what to call. And you are coming in during a time when there is complications on CBC, funding, teachers, and so on. And you have never worked in public service. So my question is, what motivates you now at your retirement age to work in public service, Honorable Migos, for us to approve you? What is it? Convince me.
Let's take the next. Kikaria.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe my question to the nominee is basic education faces so many challenges, one of which is capitation and the addition of fee charged by schools. Secondly, there are those issues that arise because of the school feeding program. How do you plan to address these challenges to ensure timely disbursement of capitation funds and compliance with the Act provisions to eliminate additional fees, thereby ensuring accessible and inclusive education for all Kenyan children? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me start with Honorable Gikaria's question on the basic education issue of capitation. The problem of capitation, or the issue of capitation, is a problem that is of a national nature. It is an issue that arises from the fact that we do not have enough resources in the country. In fact, in the capitation model, the government was supposed to do 80% of capitation to the schools. But at no time has it ever been able to give that figure either on time or in total. So there is a challenge in the money coming to the schools for them to be able to undertake their programs on time. So one of the things that may be brought to bear so that that problem is resolved would be agreeing with Treasury through Parliament that the sums of the budget of the ministry be ring-fenced, because it's a sensitive ministry, so that it gets released on time and released in totality. That is one of the ways that we can resolve the weakness in that particular area of capitation. There are programs and there are policies in place that do not allow the teachers in schools to raise or to give extra fees or levies from the parents. But there are some principals or some teachers or some schools that flout this particular requirement or this particular regulation. So therefore, what we would do is to ensure that we have a strict implementation of those policies by ensuring that we have a watertight disciplinary mechanism for those who actually flout those particular regulations and policies. On the school feeding program, it is a program that was rolled out by government to cover the ASAL counties where there are difficulties of getting food, and also the informal settlements in some towns. And it is currently covering 26 counties. We have a coverage of about 2.6 million children. And it is a program that has to be continued because it helps the students to be retained in school, and it helps them to come, and continue being in school. So what needs to be done is to come up with programs and policies that allow intergovernment agencies, for example, Kenya Meat Commission or the Cereals Board, so that we can utilize the amounts of money we have to be able to reach more children. It's a program that the government wants to continue, and it's a program that if I was nominated, I would continue to pursue. On the question of retirement age, I am not yet on that.
It's irrelevant. There's no age limit for a minister.
There's no age limit.
Mary?
Thank you, Chairman. I want to pick up from where...
Honorable Speaker. That question of age was building my question. And I was asking, what is his motivation in joining public service?
Yeah, let me answer about motivation, but not age.
Yes.
But nobody
There's
asked
no
about...
age limit provided in
exactly,
any law.
Honorable Speaker, but I'm also aware.
On being a minister.
That is true, Honorable Speaker, and I don't know whether you got my...
You say he has never worked in public service.
So I was
What is motivating him at this age to accept to be appointed?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that question. Let me just say that the job that I've been doing as an advocate and working in this country, I have also represented public institutions, so that it can't be argued that because I was in private practice, I have not had any motivation to work for the public. I've also done pro bono work for a lot of public institutions. As I indicated earlier, I've also doubled up in politics, running for parliament, and it's because I wanted to be or to work in the public sector and to assist a lot of the things that I see happening. So it's not true that I have no motivation to work in the public sector. And as I said, I'm currently the chairman of Kengen. We have done a lot of public programs. We've been able to resolve a lot of the issues that were there pending, ensuring that for the last 1 year, our plants have been 95% available, meaning we've been able to produce electricity at that level without it going below 90%, meaning I've been actually doing some work for the public.
Mary?
Thank you, Chairman. My question to the nominee is on free and compulsory basic education. The Act provides clearly that every child, up to 11, should have free compulsory basic education. And Section 28(2) mandates the Cabinet Secretary, in consultation with the National Education Board, to ensure the establishment of all learning institutions, be it the primary, the secondary, special needs, name them. But despite all these provisions, the Kenyan parent is still waiting to see this provision coming into fruition. I want to ask the nominee, what are you going to do? Because today, even the free JSS, today parents are being charged more money than even the Form 1s. All communication circulars from the ministry have been disregarded. What are you going to do? And we're receiving concerns from Kenyans telling us how we are splashing money at all levels by various institutions, NGCDF, county government, I don't know, there's presidential bursary. There are so many bursaries. What are your thoughts towards probably seeing how those funds are harnessed to ensure that we provide free compulsory basic education to Kenyans? Thank you.
Thank you.
Daud?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the nominee has talked about CBC. If he is confirmed, grade 9 is just round the corner. And he is aware, he has said the funds are not there, they are not adequate. So what would be his position when we get to January next year? Where will the grade 9s be? Will they be in senior secondary, or will they still be in junior secondary where there are no classes? Because there are no JSS teachers, there are no interns for that matter. Secondly, there is a problem of all schools which retain exam slips, which there have been many circulars from all the ministers who have been there that they should not be retained. What is your thought on that? And the last one is special needs schools. They have been ignored completely by the Ministry of Education. If you are confirmed, what are you going to do about the special needs schools?
Deal with those two.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'll start with the question on the parents being charged a lot of money by various institutions beyond what is indicated in the various circulars from the ministry. Honorable Speaker, the problem, as I understand it, is a problem that arises out of the Constitution with the formation of the constitutional, the independent constitutional body called TSC. In the Constitution, TSC is in charge of all the teachers, and it handles including the discipline of the teachers. Now, what then happens is the Ministry of Education is in charge of releasing funds to schools, and when those funds are not used properly, or when the teachers do not follow the circulars, the Ministry of Education doesn't have power to discipline those teachers. They have to go through, they have to prepare a report, go through TSC to give that punishment. So what has happened because of the reforms that are taking place, there are consultations where we are supposed to work together, and what has come up is to agree with TSC so that with respect to principals, the Ministry of Education becomes an agent of TSC with respect to handling those aspects, especially where they do not follow the circulars from the ministry. So there are regulations that are being discussed as we speak, and once it is agreed, that then would be a problem of the past, because once an audit is done and it is found that a teacher has not done what he was supposed to do, then it is possible for the ministry to take action against that teacher directly without going through TSC. Then the question from Honorable Dawood, there were three. I will deal with the issue of retention of certificates, which has been a problem that has been there throughout, I think, the educational lifespan of Kenya. As I understand it, the schools are only agents of the National Examination Council with respect to certificates, so they are not supposed to retain the certificates. But there is a problem, and the problem is the retention of the certificates is because of non-clearance of fees, for example. So there is need to balance the question of the school needing its fees and the student requiring to have its certificate. So it is something that if you found that I'm fit to take up this position, would have to look into it, find out how far those discussions are, because they've been going on, and then we pick it up from there. Because I believe if it is a question of schools having pending bills vis-a-vis the pending school fees that the children have not paid, maybe we can have an audit and know the exact amount and do one block application either to Treasury through Parliament so that this is paid off, and then the children can get their certificate. So there is a possibility that there is a way that can be resolved if we come together and discuss it and see how best that problem can be resolved, because we have to get a balance. The special needs schools, under the capitation model, they do get an amount that is slightly higher than the normal schools. There are also programs and policies that require that, for example, where they need facilities, their allocation is supposed to be slightly higher. But because of lack of resources, it has become difficult to meet all their requirements. What then would be the solution to it is to come up with other programs or other thoughts where maybe we'll get partners to partner with them so that we can be able to handle the other extra requirements as an institution. But it is not something that I can here and now make a decision on what will be done, but I know that it is a problem that needs to be handled. Some of the children that have disabilities and other challenges are also in the normal schools, and they're integrated in those schools. But the programs or the provisions that require those schools to have the special, sort of the special needs, like ramps in those schools, some of them have not been done. But again, that's because of the lack of resources. So really, if we are able to get resources, then we'd be able to handle that. On the question that he asked, Honorable Dawood asked about the junior school, where it will be domiciled, I think the Presidential Task Force went through public participation, and they made a recommendation that the junior school needs to be domiciled in the current primary schools, so that the and the reasons were two, mainly. The first reason was because it is going to be cost effective, because we have an extra 2 classes, that is standard 7 and 8. And then the other one was the issue of cost to the parents, where they felt that if they were to move to secondary school, they'll need to pay more for those uniforms and such other things. There was also the question of age, because it was felt that these children are much younger, and if they went to join their older brothers in high school, there might be a challenge there. So there is a decision that has already been reached that these schools, these children, this year 9 will be domiciled in.
There's a point of order here from the Deputy Speaker.
No, I'm saying when you say the age, you say it very lightly, because the age is a 10-year-old going to be able to be mixed with, children of the other gender and who are 18. There's a likelihood of sexual abuse.
Yes, that is the reason.
Yeah, so make sure that that's very passionate about.
It was a well thought out decision because of those challenges where the older boys would perhaps, I wouldn't know, but they would perhaps end up molesting the younger boys, and that brings other challenges.
Point of order. But Mr. Speaker, the ones who would be in grade 9 would be the same age the Form 1s were before. So there are no 10-year-olds to go to grade 9. But what I am asking the nominee, grade 9, they do not have the classes in the junior secondary schools or the primary schools, where if you are confirmed, and it's only 3-4 months left, if you are confirmed, where are you going to take those grade 9s? And we do not even have labs in the primary schools or JSS. So where are you going to take them? It's only 3-4 months remaining. We need to think about it.
Very quickly, while in the high schools, we will have empty 2 classes and a laboratory or 2 which are full there. So I don't know what we will use those classrooms for while we don't have them in the primary schools.
Yeah, I was actually coming to that. Thank you for those interjections. When the decision was reached that grade 9 or the junior school will be domiciled in primary schools.
Migos,
yes.
You are answering questions as if you are a minister in office, defending a position. You are a nominee minister. The questions being put to you is for you to tell this committee whether what they're asking you, the vetting members, whether what they're asking you is okay with you, or you will institute changes, and in your view, what you will do if you become the minister. Because you are now talking as if you are defending a position you already hold, which is not the case.
Thank you for that guidance. My personal position is the decision to have the junior school domiciled in the primary school is the correct one. And it is a position that if you found it fit for me to become minister, I would enforce. And how would I do that? An audit has been done to determine that there are 16,000 classrooms that are required. So far, 3,500 are under construction, and they're likely to be ready in the next 2 or 3 months. The other 7,500, I understand, are supposed to start in October, and they'll take 3 months. The shortage that will be there then comes to 5,000. This 5,000, then we have to do a systematic check to find out whether the adjacent schools where there will be no Form 1s, the children can go and study in those particular classrooms.
No point of order, Chair.
Yes. Yeah. Majority Leader.
Chair, I had skipped asking a question because I had wanted to hear the nominee. And now that I've heard him, and you have put the question very well to him, paraphrased what the Honorable Dawood was asking. And he's telling us that he is confident JSS grade 9 would sit well in primary schools, whereas many of us in this room, because we are dealing with these issues on a day-to-day basis. There are members in Parliament who will tell you there are schools that are 20, 15 kilometers apart. So if you tell us that you will have some kids taken to a school neighboring where they'll be hosted, then I can tell you it's going to be very impractical. And I think the direct question we wanted to hear from you, Mr. Migosi, was maybe just let me start from where Kenyans are asking, because they were asking, you are the running mate of the former cabinet secretary, Ezekiel Machogu. Kenyans have been asking, is this the right person for the job, or is he going to just be an appendage of the person he was running as deputy governor for? You are now telling us that you are confident what had been started before you even get to the ministry would work. And we have 8 classrooms, for instance, in a primary school. Secondary schools have at least 4 classrooms in a single stream school. If you take grade 9 to the primary school, you need to construct a classroom and leave a classroom empty in the secondary school. You will have no laboratories in the secondary schools, in the primary schools, whereas you have them in the secondary schools. You are telling us you need 16,000 classrooms. You said here that one of the challenges, or rather any problem that you have identified in the ministry from the briefing probably you have gotten from the PSS and other ministry officials, relates to funding. So if you have 16,000 classrooms shortage, on average a classroom will take 800,000 to $1 million shillings if done by CDF. If done by the ministry, on average it takes about 2 million shillings. So are you telling us you will, within the next 5-6 months before January, to be able to accommodate grade 9 in primary schools, be in a position to raise, is that almost 32 billion shillings for building of classrooms? And my direct question is, do you have the courage to change that which is not working in the Ministry of Education?
Thank you, Honorable Chunga, for that. What I'm saying...
I said what I told you less politely.
Yes.
Now, go on.
What I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, is if we have a problem, we got to get a solution for it.
Right.
There is no question that Year 9s will not be in class in January.
The question is,
one way or
which class? In primary section or in secondary section?
Yes. So my position was a philosophical position that domiciling it in primary school made sense. But if we find...
Now move from philosophical to practical.
Now, if we find... if we find that philosophical position is not practical while you are in position with the facts and factors that will be provided at that point, then we got to make a decision because the children must learn. So what I can say here...
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes. What I can say here is that I'm ready to take the decision that is in the best interest of the children.
The children of Kenya.
Yes.
And you have the courage to do so.
And have the courage to do so. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker.
Ferdinand?
And you can only... Mr. Speaker.
Okay, we'll go to the next.
Let me come in.
Yes.
You can only give that decision if he becomes the minister, he says.
Yes.
Let me come in now. Appointee...
Switch off your mic.
Yeah. So I just want to ask you a very specific question, which I've worked and I'm going through at my constituency and I hope elsewhere as well. This is on the learner with disability. Learners with disability in this country are facing a lot of problems. I see some of them and I said, what the hell is this? To access education has been a problem. Just because we don't have enough schools that can take care of that. Of course, there's special need to have the teachers who are specialized in that. I want you to tell me what would you do, because to be able to deal with these disadvantaged children in our society. How would you, if you became a Minister of Education? Because that has not been addressed for quite some time now.
Rugara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two questions to the nominee. The first one is, we've just come out of a strike by the intern teachers demanding confirmation, and in as much as that was directed at TSC, policy on education is by the ministry, and TSC just takes care of the human resource element of the teachers. There is also a threat, as we speak, of yet another strike, which means if it is not addressed properly, then our children's learning may be interfered with. My question to you is, how do you intend to relate with the TSC, which, according to the teachers, is accused of high-handedness and mistreating them? And the example they give is the recent sacking of 742 interns who claim to have been unfairly and procedurally dismissed just because they exercised their constitutional right to go on strike. So how would you, as the policy maker, relate with the TSC? Number two, as regards the classes, because that is the biggest infrastructure for schools, there are areas that are highly disadvantaged. Would you espouse a policy of affirmative action in respect of areas where these classes and classrooms are highly required?
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I would like to ask the nominee for education the following question. The Minister of Education disbursed a school capitation where each child is supposed to get 1,420 for primary and around 15,000 for per annum for junior secondary school. The NEMI system is based on availability of birth certificate for pupils as full proof for accountability. So you present a birth certificate and the child gets money. Kids without birth certificates end up not being given capitation, and yet they are in school and require funds. There are schools with over 1,500 kids who get capitation for only 350 kids because the other kids do not have birth certificates. This, for me, is a constitutional issue because it speaks to discrimination. That children are being discriminated in school. You're actually growing rich schools, poor schools, because children have birth certificates, others do not have birth certificates. The kids are denied funds for an administrative issue that is not their making. The ministry needs to look for a no punitive measure or a non-punitive measure to ensure schools are capitalized and every student gets his or her fair share. This has resulted to poor schools and rich schools. All schools must get capitation based on all kids in school and not only kids with birth certificates. That's the background I'm trying to lay there. Nominee, I want to ask you this. How will you stop this discrimination if you are approved as a Cabinet Secretary for Education? Secondly, how will you improve on NEMIS to ensure there's no corruption, that it captures all kids without necessarily having a birth, whether the child has a birth certificate or not? The birth certificate is supposed to get funding. I suffer that because I come from a community traditionally that has never looked for birth certificates when children are born, and therefore my schools get a quarter of the capitation they're supposed to get. And this spreads in northeastern Kenya, in other places where birth certificates has not been really a significant thing. How will you handle this, nominee? Thank you.
You can deal with those three.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Wanyonyi's question with respect to special schools and children with disabilities, the learners. The only solution to handle that situation is to come up with an affirmative action program. Because in a society where we have a number of our children in that weak position, it is upon us to come up with programs and support them first. So if I was to become the CS for education, I would immediately ensure that an audit is done, find out how many schools are there for these children, how many they are, and what they require, and create a specific affirmative action for them so that they can be able to be brought up to the level of the other children. That's what I would do. To access education just like everybody else. To Honorable Mrugara's question with respect to the strikes and the threat that is coming up. This morning when I woke up, and yesterday, the Finance Bill 2023 was also declared null and void, meaning we are back to utilizing the Finance Bill of 2022, which means that the question of resources is shrinking even further. The threat of the strike by the teachers is based on their collective bargaining agreement, which was supposed to be effected, I think, from this July. Now, it is imperative that we arrest that situation by one, ensuring that we have clear and forthright discussions with the unions, so that we are able to come up with a solution, because they also live in this country. And why am I saying that? I'm saying that because in 2019, when we had COVID, it was not possible to sign a monetary CBA with the unions. So when TSC discussed with them, they agreed to sign a non-monetary CBA. That gives me hope that these are Kenyans and they'll be able to see the real situation on the ground and will agree to come up with a working solution, even if it is to defer some of their needs so that they do not go on strike. On the high-handedness of TSC, I plan to have discussions and meetings with them, because I believe that sometimes what creates friction is maybe non-discussions or non-meetings with these other colleagues or other players in the sector. One of the things that I think works, and I've seen it work from Kengen, where I come from, is when people have different positions and then you shoot letters to each other, then it becomes even more complicated. If we were to have the issues reduced and then we sit together, we will be able to find out what is the problem, what is the reason why they are not following or they are not adhering to the circulars that are being issued. The reason is because all of us, the Ministry of Education, the TSC, the unions, the associations, the stakeholders, the sponsors, the religious sponsors, all of us are working for the children of Kenya. So if the interest is that of the children, we should be able to get a solution to whatever problem that we face if we discuss it openly. With respect to disadvantaged areas where we need to ensure that the children have their particular classes, it is a problem that needs to be solved. And one of the ways this can be done is by partnering with other organizations. For instance, you would work with organizations to build affordable classes from which then we could lease and pay them in installments. So we could look at the situation the way it is and come up with affirmative action to ensure that those classes are there, because those children will be disadvantaged if we don't organize for them to have the classes to be able to study. Honorable Owen, the question on the children not being captured in NEMIS. It is true. The NEMIS tool is based on the birth certificates. And where there is no birth certificate, the children are not captured. If they are not captured, then they don't get the capitation. So it is straight away a discrimination on those children, because the Constitution under Article 53 does not say the children that are supposed to be funded have to have a birth certificate. It just says the children of Kenya must get their education. So what has happened after that, I think problem was raised with the ministry. A group or a team was formed, and they have undertaken a physical census a 50-day physical census of the children in the country, and that exercise is ending tomorrow. Once that is done, those children will be fed into the system. In the meantime, the NEMIS is not comprehensive enough. So there's a proposal to come up with a larger ICT program, which we are calling KEMIS, the Kenya Education National Management Information System, whereby it will capture not only the children from birth or from entering school, but it will capture everything else. There'll be what do you call them? You call them modules inside there that capture everything relating to the student, so that you are given a number when you enter school and you stay with this number until you get employed. So that if you go to a particular school, it will show you've gone to this school. If you graduate, it will show you graduated with this degree. So until the time you get employed, then you can change the numbers at that point. This also helps us resolve the issue of certificates or fake certificates as are known in this country. So that problem is being addressed, and it's a genuine problem, and I believe it is something that if I became CS, I would follow personally to ensure it is done.
Yes, as Honorable Mbui comes on, nominee, would you consider when on dealing with Owen Bayer's issue, would it not be prudent for you to engage the registrar of births and deaths to go around schools and issue certificates, birth certificates to children, especially in disadvantaged areas?
That is correct, Mr. Speaker, because once this exercise ends tomorrow and we have the report showing which schools or which students do not have birth certificates, then we can engage them to go and issue those birth certificates. It's a possibility.
Robert Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Dr. Migos, you know, the issue of capitation is normally very low based on the amounts that are given and constantly delayed. How do you feel that you deal with this issue? Then there's also the reference all the time to free primary education, free secondary education, yet we are aware that parents have to pay for teachers that are paid for by parents under BOM. And also we have constant, every time we have exams, the parents have to pay for them. Co-curricular activities, parents have to pay for them. So the uniforms, parents have to pay. So will you consider dropping this misleading term of free education from Kenyan education sector, or will you make it really free? And finally, the Basic Education Act is very clear that no child should be sent away from school for whatever reason. But this is constantly happening, because if you go to all our rural areas, you find children walking back home during the day for, small amounts of money, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 shillings, 100 shillings. What will you do to deal with this menace?
Thank you, Speaker. Mine is nominee. How will you propose to enhance teachers' training, teachers' evaluation and monitoring, teachers' accountability and professional development to enhance quality education in Kenya?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. Dr. Julius, your predecessor was actually a district officer. I was a district commissioner. So he has a fairly feel of the different parts of this country, including the most rural and marginalized areas. I don't want to repeat what Honorable Kosing said. You haven't worked in public service, and you haven't worked in education other than getting educated. My serious concern, really very serious concern, is there are too many moving things in education. And the first thing which I want to take up with you is NACONEC. The idea of coming up with NACONEC from the beginning
is to allow access to education for the nomadic children, the pastoralists, the most marginalized people in this country. But within very few years, Nakonek has been turned into some sort of paltry for all disadvantaged enclaves in Kenya, including Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, and all that. Going forward, if the House approves your nomination, how will you help in terms of bringing back Nakonek Online to address the mandate for which it was founded in the first place? Secondly, it is this issue of Tibet. I think honorable colleagues have touched on, but I want to repeat. The idea of having Tibet institution is once we lost the middle-level colleges, I think in the late 80s and 90s, then Tibet is found that this is a serious gap in our education, particularly on the side of technical skills. With the current funding model, a lot of those youngsters are likely to drop out of those institutions. What would be your plan or a strategy to make sure that those learners remain in those institutions until they qualify? Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Nominee, answer those three.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'll start with the Honorable Mbui's question on the low capitation. The low capitation is an issue that is tied to the low funding in the government. As I said earlier, the government was supposed to be funding 80%, but the capitation that has been going to schools is far much less than that 80%, and that is a problem of not having enough funds coming from Treasury. And of course, there is a bigger problem in that the economy is not able to meet those obligations. And the issue relating to the primary, the schools not being free, education not being free, because of these other additions that actually sometimes lead to even the figures being higher than the school fees that is supposed to be paid, and then using that to send the children home. That is a violation of actually the policy that exists, and it boils down to the issue that I had raised earlier of the difficulty in ensuring that those who flout these laws are punished. And the solution to that is to ensure that we are able to come up with a fund that will totally cover the costs of education in the country, so that the children just go to school and the government pays for everything, so that the question of sending them home, retaining certificates do not arise. And that's what I was saying earlier, that perhaps it is time we have a conversation as to what is the actual amount of money in this country is everybody spending on education, and what is the amount of money in this country that we need yearly to cover for all the children, so that it is completely free. If that audit was done, on one hand, the amount of money from various units, because you go to CDF, you'll find a bursary, you go to counties, there's a bursary, you go to the private sector, there is a bursary, there are scholarships that come from other institutions that cover certain parts, but nobody has done an audit to find out for sure how much, and then there's capitation, etc. How much is it that is going to this particular sector called education? Because it then happens that because there is no coordination, there is duplicity. Some people get more. Some people get more than 3-4 amounts coming from the various institutions. Others get nothing. So if we did, on the one hand, that particular audit, And then on the other one, we find out for sure how much do we need per child from class 1 all the way to university. If we find then that there is a gap, then we come up and find out how do we fill that gap. I wouldn't say what it is, because once you do it, you might find that we actually have more money than we need, in which case we'll be okay. But if we find that there is less money, then what do? Do we come up with an education bond, for example, to cover that part so that every child goes to school for that period? So it is time we need to have that conversation, including with the private sector, because the private sector, when they give scholarships, they are giving to these children. So if we come together as a country, we will be able to solve that problem. The challenge that we have now is everybody operates in isolation. Everybody is doing their things in isolation. You can't read what is happening. One arm, you can't see what is happening on the other side. But if we were open, transparent, and then we say, this is what we have, this is the problem we have, then we'll be able to solve it. So that is the way I would go into it to solve this problem once and for all. Indeed, on the question of uniforms, for example, if it was taken up by government, for example, we have NYS, they can do the uniforms, we can work with other textile companies, then these ones do the uniforms and we distribute them to the children. So we would have solved that problem of uniforms. But we have to have that conversation to see what is the best way that that can be resolved. Honorable Mule, teachers training. We now have the new CBC system, and teachers have been undergoing a lot of training and retooling. For instance, next year we don't have Form 1s. What is going to happen to the teachers who have been teaching Form 1? So we need to address that question. The teachers who are teaching Year 9, are they well equipped to do that teaching? In fact, when I was talking to TSC yesterday or the day before, they told me there has not been a rationalization of teachers. There are situations where, for example, in primary school, as we speak, they have an excess of 18,000 teachers. And this excess of 18,000 teachers came about by the issue relating to delocalization, the removal of that policy of delocalization. Then on the other hand, we have 400,000 teachers who are trained and they are not employed. On the other hand, we have a shortfall of 106,000 teachers that we need to bring in for us to be able to do the CBC up to the level where we are. So we have a problem of policies that operate in cross purposes. So there is room for us to sit down and rationalize and say, are these the type of teachers we need for this course? If I can go further, I was talking to the university team, and they said in this year, 173 students have applied to go to the university. 53,000 of those are teachers. They are going for education. So we already have 400,000. We have 53,000 applying to come in. We then have universities that are not able to meet their obligations, but they are offering these courses. Are they offering the right courses? So it is a question of us sitting down and looking at the whole sector to try and understand what is really ailing us vis-a-vis what we are offering. Because you cannot be offering courses where you have 400,000 people already out, you are bringing in 53,000 just because we employed 58,000 the other day. So everybody thinks when I come out, I'm going to get a job. In 4 years, we'll be having 600,000 teachers or 700,000 teachers. But on the other hand, we have 18,000 that are not told properly to deal with the system that we have. And all this comes to us, and that duplicity works backwards to raising the cost of education in this country. So what we need to do is frank, be forthright, and say, let us look at this problem in its entirety and look at it so that we can get a solution. And if every day when you wake up making a decision in the education sector, under Article 129, and you say you are doing this for the benefit of the children, you will make the right decision. You would make the right decision, and this problem would be resolved. Going to Russell's question on not having worked in the public sector, I'm very passionate about the public sector. As I sit here, I have educated over 600 children. They've gone to various universities and various schools. I come from a a humble background. I have seen what education can do. And I know when you disadvantage a child, you've taken away their life. Because without education is the only thing that can help children in this country move to where they are supposed to be. So we must, as we wake up, if you are in the sector, ask yourself, this decision I'm making, is it for the benefit and the interest of the child? If you find that the answer is no, and you're in the public sector, then you're in the wrong place. You must answer that question correctly. So in terms of NACONEC, it is true, it was a program that was supposed to deal with the ASAL areas. But the disadvantage in, for example, Northeastern, is not different from the disadvantage from a child who lives in the slums in Mathare. They are both Kenyan children. So if we are able to get enough resources to cover for the children in Northeastern, we should be doing it for those other informal sectors. The question should be, how do we raise the funds so that we move from covering 2.6 million children to 10 million children? Because they are all children of this country. So what we need to be working on is not reducing what NACONEC is doing, but expanding it. Is not reducing what the school feeding program is doing, but expanding it. Because with that expansion, you know, somebody who is hungry in Northeastern is the same hunger that somebody suffers in another place. So we just need to accept that we are all Kenyans and we need to resolve the problems that we have in the best way possible. So if I was to become nominee, I would expand NACONEC. I would not reduce it. I would look for resources to ensure that in Northeastern, even the children who are following their parents, create caravan schools so that they go together with their parents and they are being followed to study. So that, I mean, it is not rocket science. Those children are our children who are in this country. Yeah? And we cannot have a country where you do not enjoy the benefits of the country.
Shuria.
Oh, he has not answered the question on TVET.
On TVET.
TVET.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
Concise and precise.
The TVET is a very important program. The TVETs are being constructed in all the 290 constituencies. We have done, or they have done 252. I think there are 52 remaining. And what I would do for TVET is create the TVET colleges in the country and isolate a few to become centers of excellence. Because what is happening is, like, we are in Kenya and we have countries like Sudan, Congo, and they're not as advanced in the TVET using the technical studies as we are. So that we can have students coming from other countries to study in our colleges here in order to raise the funds. With respect to the dropout is because of the funding. So as a government or as a country, we need to start thinking, what other revenue, self-revenue collection, raising revenue methods can we come up with so that we can be able to sustain ourselves? And that is part of it. The other thing that needs to be done is we have major projects that take place in the country. We need to develop a mechanism where, if we are going to undertake, say, the expressway project, we identify how many trades, how many disciplines are in that project, so that we inbuild a component in the project where the students from these TVET colleges would work in that particular project, both as learning, because the TVET, you do 50% in class and 50% with the industries, and work with the industry so that we do not lose that momentum. So we need to keep going and expanding.
Thank you. Shuria? Kama huna swali ni sawa sawa.
Niko na swali, Bwana Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Bwana nominee, there's a lot of uproar in the education sector, and I was glad when you picked the issue of the finance bill. I'm not sure if you're aware of the High Court judgment on the constitutional petition 371 of 2021, Nelson Harvey versus Cabinet Secretary for Education, and 7 others. on the CBC. What's your take on the judgment?
I haven't had a chance to look at the judgment. Maybe when I get a chance to look at it, then I'll get back to you. I actually not looked at it. Thank you.
Mishi?
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, there's been a tendency whereby some TSC teachers, when they are posted to ASAL areas, they refuse to go on the basis of insecurity. This has really disadvantaged the learners from those areas to an extent that some of them drop some subject because they don't have teachers. What policies are you going to put in place to ensure that these students or learners from ASAL areas are not disadvantaged in terms of education? My second question, there have been recent research, and it has been noted that there's quite a number of girls dropping from school due to early pregnancies. What measures are you going to put in place to ensure that these girls are given a second chance to learn and they're not expelled from school until they're ready to give birth? And after giving birth and having maternity, they can be reinstated back to the school so that they finish their education. I thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Mukami? Amisi? Caleb?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to know, the nominee, what your views on the continuous delay of the disbursement of HELB loan. It has become a thorn in the flesh. Most university students are on the streets on the same, and also the arbitrary increase in the university fees that is now making education look like a privilege rather than it's supposed to be for everyone. Then lastly, Speaker, the late Dr. Griffin, the former founder of Starehe Boys Center, where I schooled, once told us that if you are given a glass or a coffee cup, you wash it. Wash it as if there's no any other coffee cup that has been washed before. And the nominee, you are going to a very sensitive ministry. We've heard all these stories now and before on how you expect to do. Education, to me, is like an economic necessity to this country. It's a major pillar of any nation. And Honorable Speaker, from even the elementary to secondary to the university, if you look at the ASEAN countries, the development parts of Singapore, South Korea, Japan, it mostly was on education. They streamlined the education sector. When you report to office upon approval, if in case you are approved, what is these radical measures you are going to introduce in that ministry? What is this miracle? How are you going to perform the miracle, and what are the paraphernalias of this miracle? Because we need to see, we've been hearing these stories. So what is this that you are going to see in the Ministry of Education for once, when maybe in 100 days of your service to that ministry?
Answer those, Migos.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. To Honorable Mish's question on the northeastern teachers refusing to go because of insecurity, this has been a teething and thorny problem for TSC, and the only way this can be done is if we work together with the Ministry of Interior to come up with the parameters and strategies to ensure that the teachers are secured. And one of those would be perhaps coming up with low-cost boarding schools so that the student can be studying in one place that can be easily secured. On the question of girls' pregnancy, the ministry's policy is that they are not supposed to be sent away, and they are supposed to be given a chance to come back and continue with their studies. We don't have a policy where if they become pregnant, then that's the end of their life. That changed. It was there before, but it has since changed. To Honorable Amisi's question on the continuous delay on HELB loans, this again is a problem of the resources being released on time, and the issue relating to the collections of those who have already gone before. I understand that there is a study that is going on to find out whether HELP can come up with a bond to ensure that they have enough resources to cover the students so that we avoid this problem. On the issue of the increase on fees, I understand the fees has not increased for the programs. What has happened is that before, the program's cost was not being indicated. Now with the new funding model, the program amount is being indicated and the parents are thinking the fees has been increased from what was being given as capitation. So the fees, as I understand it, are not increased, and what would happen is under the new funding model, the student is still getting funded through the scholarship and HELP as to ensure that they are not paying more than they were supposed to be paying before. On the question of what I would do...
Excuse me, Mr. Nominee. You know, when you said that the money being indicated as school fees is the actual cost as costed by the ministry. But when a parent in the village receives a school fees, invitation admission letter that has 350,000, 450,000, can you imagine the panic you're causing across the country? It is careless and not strategic. This is how you build anger in the country. So the letter should just have the exact cost per household cost, not the full amount, because the rest is being covered by the Higher Education Fund and HELP. So I hope you're going to change that if you're confirmed.
Thank you, Madam.
Related. Sorry to interrupt. Maybe Mr. Migos, you could also tell us in relation to that university funding, what would be your view on the funding using public resources of students who are in private universities? Well, across the country we have universities and campuses that are almost closing down because they don't have students being sent to them by COUPS, or the Kenya Colleges and Universities Placement Services.
Speaker, allow me briefly. On the same issue on the university funding model, the students, you'll have to have a criteria on determining who's the most vulnerable or poor. And what we have seen is that you have a category of children of single parents and a category of children who are orphans. And you give different, what measures will be put in place to ensure that you actually get the most vulnerable in the community and not disadvantage them in the new university funding model?
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Finish the other round. Then
yes, I was going to...
You're going to
the issue of the miracle that I would do in 100 days. There is no miracle that I'm going to perform. That there is a problem in the sector, and is a problem that needs to be faced head on. So there'll be discussions on what do we do to solve those problems, and I'll not be able to do it alone. But I will offer leadership and hold discussions and consultations with each and everybody who is involved in the sector. For example, with respect to not having enough classes so that the children can be in school, the year 9 children can be in school in January, is an immediate problem. So that's a problem that takes priority that we need to look at and solve. So I can't sit here and say I have a miracle solution to all the problems that are there, but what I can do is say I'm ready and willing and able to offer leadership to get the kind of solutions that are required in the sector.
Order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I didn't say miracle in literal terms. Honorable Speaker, when you stand to be a president of Kenya, you know what ails the country. You tell the people, this is the problem of this nation. This is what I want to solve. That's what I need to hear from the nominee. This is the problem of the Ministry of Education. This is how I intended to solve. You can't say, I will get there and consult. What are you consulting on? On what?
Migos, yes. Waswahili wanasema kila shetani na mbuyu wake.
Thank you, Honorable. What I can say is the challenge, as I said earlier, is a question of funding. So when I get to office, if you sit fit to approve my nomination, I see a solution in this way. In the monies that we are giving to the education sector, which is 27% of the budget, is this fund being used for the purpose for which it was meant? The UNESCO recommendation is that any country should spend not more than 20% of its budget in education. So we are spending 27. We are already above by 7%. It is not going to be possible to get probably more funding from the central government.
You know,
so the solution
you are
must
told
be
Migos by Emase and somebody else, duplex applications of public resources.
Yes.
Take the issue of bursaries. The MCA is giving bursary. The Member of Parliament is giving bursary. The Women Rep is giving bursary. The Governor is giving bursary. Your ministry is giving bursary. Banks are giving scholarships, and many other organizations. Apart from the banks, all the others are drawing money from the same source. And sometimes you find fraudulent activities where one child gets a bursary from each of those giving bursaries. How are you going to reform the bursary scheme that will largely contribute in saving probably even 10 billion shillings?
Yes, Chair. We also have TVET and also the technical schools doing the same thing.
Yes, I do. So as I had indicated earlier, because we've not done an audit of how many amounts of how much money is being used for this particular sector, that is the first thing I would commission, an audit to find out how much money is out here for the.
And you have the courage to dismantle these cartels?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. You are asked by Jeanette.
Yes, I'm going.
You know what you are walking into.
Yes, I understand that. I understand that there are cartels and other people, but we come at this time, at a critical time when there is a crisis. Using this crisis, it is very possible to dismantle the cartels because with the support, the political support, the parliamentary support, and the support from the public, if we say today that we know you've been doing the wrong thing, we will report you. Somebody would think twice before they continue with what they are doing. So I would use this crisis to dismantle the cartels that exist there. But on the issue of private universities that Mheshimiwa Ichung'wa asked, what the students who are going to private universities are getting is the loan facet, not the scholarship. So, and this is born out of the contention that the parents have chosen to take their children to private universities. They should be able to fund that. So they are getting the loan portion of the funding, not the scholarship portion.
That is under the new funding model.
Yes, that is under the new funding model.
There are students who are ongoing under the old DUC system.
Yes, the ongoing students under the DUC system are still getting the capitation. And speaking as an advocate, I think once you give somebody a right, if you start taking it in the middle, it becomes a bit bad. So I'm thinking that maybe...
My question was, what's your opinion on funding, using public resources to fund students in private universities? Or rather, even start from placement.
Yes.
Why do we have to place students in private universities where we have not filled up all the vacancies we have in public universities built on public resources, or reeling in huge debt because they don't have adequate resources since they don't have students? If approved, would you push COOPs to send more students to private or to public universities, irrespective of whether it's just because even the loan element is public resources?
Yes. What I think can be done is to review the policy that is in place. Find out how did that policy come to be, because it's ongoing. The one for the new funding model has changed, but the previous one on capitation was a policy that was in place and was going on. So, and then we can do up the math and find out if it's just maybe 2 years that are remaining or 3. But it's not something that I can speak to at the moment. It is something that perhaps that I need to do more research on in order to be able to come to an informed decision.
Yes.
Madam Lesuda's question on how do we determine who is the most vulnerable. The tool that is used is called the means testing instrument that has 8 parameters. We think that those parameters are not comprehensive enough because it does not identify and they are not linked sufficiently to determine what the incomes of those parents are. So what we think is that it needs to be expanded and linked, because what has happened is you would find the rich not feeling the proper figures and the poor, because sometimes of lack of knowledge, they do not put in the right information. So we need to come up with a tool akin to the psychometric test, where you can put so many answers, but at the end, you get the correct result.
Because I'll be more comfortable if you say, if confirmed, I will come up with a tool.
If confirmed. No? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. If confirmed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Because you are going to give policy direction to the ministry.
Yes, if confirmed.
Yes, so when, okay, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. But I will not talk again, but I wanted to just say to the nominee, if you get this opportunity to serve Kenyans in that docket, because I've listened to you carefully and you keep talking about money. All your solutions seem to be around having a budget. I want to assure you that as a parliament, we are just about to pass a very rationalized budget, where budget cuts are across the whole, all the ministries. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yes, Migosi, I think we'll end there. There are some Kenyans sending in messages. Many you have answered. One says, ensure TVET students get their certificates from their colleges within a month of graduating. The domicile of JSS we have dealt with. Another asks, where will senior secondary school be domiciled? We have dealt with. Workers with disabilities are forced to renew exemption certificates every 5 years when their status does not change. I think that is valid. Another one has said, what are you going to do about mushrooming boarding schools, especially in Kisii, that have no facilities? Another one is asking, what is going to be the fate of P1 teachers after the transition? Last, another one asks, what will you do about the imposition of extravagant uniform expenditure on students by schools? Buy a long-sleeved sweater, a short-sleeved sweater, 2 pairs of shoes, 2 pairs of trousers, so many things, when in many family setups, children use 1 pair of clothes until they're exhausted because of lack of money. Now going to school, uniform is costing more than the fees.
And you have to buy from that school.
And then you are obligated to buy from a designated retailer. Those are the cartels we are telling you about. What will you do about that?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the rationalized budget, I agree that it's going to affect a lot of operations, so we will have to look inside and see where to cut inside the operations in areas where maybe it's not a priority, so that we can attend to the most important aspects in the ministry. Workers forced to renew every 5 years their certificates. That, I think, is a question that needs to be taken up with the organization that deals with this, the relevant ministry, so that we can work together and maybe have that particular requirement removed because the person's position does not change. The mushrooming boarding schools, this is a question of the registration requirements. It means there is a weakness there. We'll need to look at the quality assurance to ensure that the registration of the boarding schools meet the requirements of the ministry. P1 teachers, they'll have to be retooled and absorbed into the new program so that they do not, because they are permanent and pensionable.
Let's end there. Let me now ask you a few questions. Do you hold any leadership in any political party?
No, Chairman.
Have you ever been adversely mentioned in any integrity-related report?
No, Chairman.
We received a memorandum. Unfortunately, I'm told it was not sent to you. You can respond to it and send an email to the Secretariat from one David Ogega Ochwangi.
Yes, they actually
you got it?
I got it and I've filed a response.
You've responded?
Yes.
Okay.
I've sent it so you could.
The clerk thought you had not received it. You've responded to it?
I rely on that response, yes.
Is it factual?
The response? No, it's not factual. It's I'm not the one who signed those documents. Mm-hmm. And I have documents from the committee confirming that position.
What is your net worth in terms of personal wealth?
I'm worth 790 million.
790 million?
Yes.
Made up in?
It's made up of largely land, and I've got tea, I've got trees, and vehicles, farm equipment, and of course the income from the law firm.
Okay. Thank you, Migos. We have also checked your documents submitted to the Secretariat and compared with what you had sent earlier, and we find them to be in order. You are consequently held. You are released to go.
I want to thank you, Chairman, for this opportunity and honorable members. And I want to also thank the many Kenyans who sent me messages of goodwill. Thank you, and I hope I'll find favor with yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Yes. Peter Trop. Do you want to pass here? Yes. Do you need any health break? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Yes.
Deno, ukimaliza utasaidia. Oh yeah. Deno. Ile koda lazima.
Kameme TV, Muthegi wa Ruriri.